Okay, good morning. This week we will do chapter 10. That was Sif Yod, Ois Yod in the Maimer. While every chapter is very important, this chapter obviously has extra importance. Just by going through the Rebbe's Sichos and Igris and Fabregens, which in general the Rebbe would reference Heichaltzu very often, but this chapter in particular is referenced throughout the Rebbe's teachings in many, many instances. And perhaps this chapter is from the most practical elements of Heichaltzu, takes many of the ideas and puts it on the table and says, okay, so this is how you will live your life. Or rather, this is how you actually reach that kind of life. Right? We learn about Heichaltzu, we learn about Bittul and about Yeshus and obviously Yisrael and Sinas Chinam and all these different issues that we deal with, or that we don't deal with, and different personalities. So how does that actually work out? How do I actually develop the art of Achdus and being able to open to other perspectives? How do I actually find that Sinas Chinam that is somewhere within me and I'm not even aware of it? Because that is exactly the catch-22 and the paradox, where you're telling everybody that they have certain things that they have to deal with, but they don't even know about it, right? They won't tell you that it's chinam. They'll tell you that there's a reason for their different feelings. And this is sort of the remedy. And in Sif Yud, which is a relatively longer chapter, in quantity and in quality, he pretty much discusses a fundamental of Chassidic life, which is Fabrengens, which is Chaverim, the brotherhood that exists with it, between Chassidim. We know there's a Hayom Yom, if I'm not mistaken, a Chaf Dalet Tevis, the Yartzeit of the Alter Rebbe, the Lul of the Alter Rebbe, where the Rebbe brings a conversation that Chassidim had with the Tzemach Tzedek, and asked the Tzemach Tzedek, what did the Alter Rebbe want with Chassidus, and what did he want with Darkei Chassidus? And interestingly, he answered what the Alter Rebbe wanted with Darkei Chassidus before he answered what he wants with Chassidus. Because first you have the ideas and then the way of life, but he flipped it, and this is a very fundamental point. And the first thing he said is what the Alter Rebbe wants with Darkei Chassidus is that Chassidim should be able to live with each other as one family, ba'ava, with love. So this is sort of the glue that holds Chassidim together. And then he's discussed what the point of Teres Chassidus is. That Chassidus is life, is light. It illuminates our lives, even the non-good, the evil in our lives. It illuminates it. And perhaps now with learning Sif, you can understand why he answered it in this order. That if Chassidus is about shining a light on reality, on our lives, in order for that light to enter our lives, it starts with the environment of living as one mishpacha ba'ava. Love and people being open with each other, that itself is what is the opening for light in our lives. And as he discusses how this actually affects us and what we gain out of this kind of relationship.
So yeah, absolutely. I think it's Hashgacha Pratis. Everything's Hashgacha Pratis, but that we're doing this ice right before Gimel Tammuz, because forgive me for saying it, I would consider this the most Heichaltzu-ish ice within Heichaltzu. In other words, whenever people talk about the Maimer Heichaltzu, very often it's referencing the Nekuda, which is being very brought out in this ice. It's like the real home run of at least hitting home. And in Gimel Tammuz, and obviously, preparing for a day that we want Barcheinu Avinu Kulam Kechad, I think it's very appropriate. So I want to touch on one of the topics that you spoke, and I would like to hear your thoughts about it, and that is the role of Chaverim in Chassidus life. Aseh L'Charav is spoken about a lot. I'm not sure, how practiced it is, but it's a very known thing. Aseh L'Charav, make yourself a mashpia. Often, for some people, could be much easier, and for some people, could be much harder. to have a real chaver. So now there's chaverim that you have when you're 10, there's chaverim you have when you're 20, and then there's chaverim that you have once you're in your own life, in your own aveda, etc. So I would actually ask you a straight out question. How do you see, at least in, somebody married and settled, etc., what do you see the role of friendship? What and why is it necessary? And what does it add?
Right. Definitely a big point that's brought out in this sif is the value of friendship. But I will just point out as well that you mentioned Asay L'Charav. In the different sikhs of Asay L'Charav, the Rebbe did reference this chapter as well. Meaning, the Asay L'Charav, as the Rebbe introduced it and advocated for, is sort of a mix of the Asay L'Charav and Knei L'Chachaver models, which we would read into the simple meaning of the Mishnah. Whereas Asay L'Charav, the whole concept of a Rav, or as we call it a Mashpia, is sort of looked at as totally, Momayla Lamata, as an authority figure all the way up there. And as everyone emphasized, Asay, which is a lashon of force yourself to follow someone even when it's uncomfortable. But the Mashpia figure in Bichlal, and this is perhaps one of the chidushim of Chassidus, in the Mashpia figure over the general Rav figure, is that there is this relationship. And there's an openness and a synergy between two people that are actually connecting to each other and being open. So obviously, in the Mashpia model, it's more one way versus Chaverim, but even that one way, it's not just, this is what's going on, okay, this is what you have to do. There's a relationship happening. There's an ability of being able to discuss things, open up about myself, hear things from another perspective, someone that understands me well, and is able to work things out with me and get me to understand what's going on within myself. But yes, a big emphasis here is Chaverim. And I'll bring another point that the Rebbe would reference this chapter as well very often when the Rebbe would discuss the value of Farbrengens. We know the Rebbe put a big emphasis on Farbrengens. B'chlal and Darkei Chassidus, Farbrengens is a big deal. Especially in the later years, the Rebbe would speak about Farbrengens again and again and again. And the Rebbe introduced Miftzei and Miledus and Tafshin Em Ches in 1988. And the Rebbe, basically every birthday there's a Farbrengen. And every year in the park there's another Farbrengen. And the Rebbe addressed it by a few Farbrengens. The Rebbe said, people are asking me, there's so much time for Farbrengens. There's no time for davening and learning. It's even Beruchni is saying, there's no, how can we just be Farbrengen all the time? Now, obviously Farbrengens was never on the account of anything else important spiritually, but a big emphasis that I would put by Farbrengens, besides for the just Shevis Achlan Gam Yachad, that I would say, look what it says in Heichaltzu, that when people come together and they make achlatas together, it brings a lot stronger kiyum. It gives one the ability to actually take the achlata more seriously, implement it more seriously. There's accountability, etc. What are the values of chaverim? The values of friendship. So the truth is in Heichaltzu, he gives three major points. Truth is four, because one is in the realm of Torah and three are in the realm of Avodah. Interestingly, in the back of Heichaltzu, when the Rebbe gave out the Kuntras and Tafshin Tes, so it came out together with a mimer of the Friedrich Rebbe. It's based on Heichaltzu, and that mimer where he chazers over the content of this sif, he actually introduces a fourth element. There is 1, 2, 3 values of friendship and avodah, and he introduces a fourth. But because I think I'm speaking for too long, so you speak for a bit, so that way there's a bit of a break over here.
No. I'm doing this. Okay, so you gave me the microphone. So what's the first?
Right. Yes, very good. Thank you. You see, this is another value that you have someone that you don't get boring after a while. Someone's able to interject. So the first value, and he uses the lashon uses this is a value in Torah and this is a value in avodah, but this obviously influences all areas of life. The value of Torah is that in the world of ideas, we all have our perspectives. So when we're learning something, we're understanding a certain idea, the way we look at it. First thing he says, look, there's no one in the world that has a monopoly on the truth. Yes, we all think the way we see things is the truth, but it doesn't work that way. To come to truth, no matter how smart you are and how understanding and developed you are, you have to bounce it off other people. Bounce it off other people, discuss with other people, hear another perspective. Not necessarily will you agree with someone else, but your positions will be more educated, more polished. Barzel bevarzel, the way he uses lashon in the Maimer, you'll rub it off. You'll rub it off, and you'll be able to have a more educated and developed position. So that's just in the world of ideas. In avodah, which means in our personal lives, in our emotional lives, in our progress, we develop as Yidden, as Chassidim, as human beings, in our midas. So he brings 3 points. Point number 1, I'll look in the line for a second, right? So point number 1 is no, that's point number 2. Point number 1 is right? There are things that we're unaware of. We're unaware. That's a reality. Because of our ego, because of our self-love, Hashem created us with a tremendous gift. But the lashon that's used, al yavikaitzba, it's a gift, but has a downside. In order to survive, we have this defense mechanism built into us, which is al kol pshoim techasa ava. We don't see all our faults. Ain't tzaddik baritz, and there's no one in this world that doesn't have any faults. Now we see how easy it is for us to see faults in other people. Well, it's not just easy; it's geschmack. Now, if we would be able to look in the mirror and see ourselves honestly and see all our faults, we wouldn't be able to survive. It would be impossible. We would be constantly living with guilt and with shame, and it would be just literally impossible. We discussed this other times. So we have this cover on us. And because of that, we don't really know ourselves properly. Or its self-awareness properly is impossible to happen on our own. We can't do it. You need other people to be open with you and be able to tell you what's going on. Now, that's an interesting kind of friend, right? Very often we have friends to protect us. What's friendship? Friendship is sort of this like bubble. Right? So we have our own al-kol p'shem techasa ava, but we're still so insecure that even with that sort of self-love, we're still able to think maybe I'm not as good. So we have other people that will completely create this wall around us and tell us, you're amazing, you're perfect, you're the best person ever, the most Chassidus Yid. Go for it. And even whenever criticism comes in, they're there to tell you, don't take the criticism, it's fine, right? So those could be nice partners, acquaintances, even it's not real friends. Real friends are able to be blunt with you and tell you this is what's going on. Obviously, in order for that to happen, there has to be a real relationship and caring and love, right? Someone just going to come and someone that has on their list of relationships as someone that just bashes them once a week. That's just masochistic. It's not really friendship.
So why do we still like each other?
You're saying besides for masochistic reasons? Well, you didn't have been known to have these tendencies for millennia. Number two that he mentions is speaking, is the value of dibur. So dibur in general is a big sugya in Chassidus. It's very interesting, the whole idea of dibur. On the one hand, in the world of Chassidus, dibur is at the bottom of the rung. Oisius are very low. It's in Malchus. Oisius are dead. On the other hand, doimim, right? On the other hand, very interestingly, we, as the human race, we are called medaber, right? There's doimim tzemeach chai. The reason why tzemeach is called tzemeach is that its value, that it grows, and chai, and animals, they live. Our value, seemingly, is intellect. We should be called maskil, chacham, maven. We're called medaber, because the true value of the human being is communication. And communication specifically through speech. Speech is mushrish and etzem hanefesh, as Chassidus quotes the pasuk, paraphrases the pasuk, nafsha yotza bedabrei, that our nefesh is expressed, is revealed, really comes out in speech. When one talks, when we verbalize ideas, when we speak about ourselves, it becomes a lot more real. When a person's in pain and they discuss their pain, it magnifies it tremendously, initially. So initially, there's just this tremendous amount of pain. You see, when people are going through tzara, people are grieving, people are in pain, people went through trauma in life, people went through very, very hard situations, or people going through basic things that they're dealing with. As long as it's kept in machshava while it bothers them, and there's this something sitting on them, but they're sort of able to go through day-to-day life. But then it sort of reaches a stage that they feel they have to let it out. And then something sort of productive happens initially. They're speaking about it, sort of get it off their chest. But as they're speaking, they get all for hits, and they get all troubled, and they're crying, and and the pain is felt in a very, very, very deep way. But then, paradoxically, as time goes on, it flips. Right then, there's a tremendous amount of pain. But then, as time goes on, because I was able to express it, it's sort of, I got it out. So as it's coming out, it's very painful. But then, the person calms down.
Did you say the Rebbe Rashab is pro-venting sessions?
Venting sessions. So actually, well, here in the Maimer, he's not discussing venting sessions. Here he's actually speaking about productive sessions. But that's about avoiding. It's a venting session. That is what it is. In other words, he's discussing directly in the Maimer the idea of discussing flaws and how to work with one's inner issues. He brings a dogma, derech mashal. This is similar to the idea of and as he brings the different perushim in Chazal, and in the world of Daigen, or something just sitting on me, bothering me, I'm anxious about something. So yesichena, just speaking about it, gets it off one's chest. Okay. In the case of avoda, which is ultimately what he's getting at, when I'm able to express it, so I feel it in a much deeper way, it resonates with me much more. And then the regret that I have over what I'm going through, over the things that I'm dealing with, is a lot stronger. And there's something interesting about regret, that when I regret about something in a very deep way, that itself helps me disconnect from that thing. Meaning, as long as I'm not.
Would you say that this is very psychological?
Extremely. If I'm not mistaken, I think this whole ois is actually a chiddush of Heichaltzu, so I don't think it exists at all in the previous mamarim. It's definitely a Heichaltzu. It's a Heichaltzu sif, and it's explaining how a human being functions and how we're able to actually go through things. Well, this is really the idea of vidui dvarim. So this kind of vidui dvarim is already brought. The Tzemach Tzedek brings it in Derech Mitzvah. He discusses this idea and the concept of tshuva, the Chassidic understanding of the concept of vidui. And this idea of being able to express something, feel it in a very deep way, and by feeling it in a very deep way, you're able to disconnect from it. Obviously, it's important to make a clear distinction between regret and guilt. Guilt works the opposite. Right? When a person feels extra guilt, very guilty, it doesn't help you disconnect from what you're dealing with. It gets you more entrenched. Yeah. And just this cycle of shame, guilt, etc. doesn't help. But when there's regret, charata, of something, and in general, the difference in Chassidus between charata and guilt is if the emphasis is on me or on asher chataloi, right? That I didn't do what the Eibishter wants, I didn't do my mission, and I want to get back to that mission instead of just my self-esteem that I killed myself and I feel terrible, etc. So
the third thing is, I see he says that you come up with eitzes for one another.
Yeah. So there's eitzes for one another, helping one another, and one second, is the eitzes the third thing, or that's still part of the?
When they talk together,
yeah. Right, and then right, so there's just, it's not so much psychologically, it's more practically. There's more people around the table. There's more ideas, how to fix things. And then there's also, and then he brings it together with, when you make achlatis together, there's a certain koyach harabim. The Rebbe explained this different ways in different sikhs. It seems it's sort of a mix of just a spiritual koyach hatzibur together with people heard what you said. So people will follow up with you. People are going to rate you on as you go on in life. Not just achlata you made to keep last year's achlata, and next year I'll make achlata to remember what last year's achlata. You have people that actually remind you what achlata is and ask you, Shmuel, what's going on? Where are you holding with this? So yeah, just having other people involved in your life is this boost and more ideas, more reinforcement,
would you say this
more
is similar to
etc.
What's similar to what the Rebbe used to encourage people to talk things over what you did in Mevinim?
Sort of. I think in general the emphasis in Yidin Mevinim was more
business.
More business. What was it in regard to? It was in regards to Parnasa Vistadrus. Getting a living, a house, where to live, basic things, but also part of the same thing. Don't just do things, based off your gut. Discuss things over, discuss things with people, get more info, get help, get a more educated position, and then you'll be able to be a lot more successful in what you're looking for.
So I think it's incredible, Ashkocha Pratis, that we're having this conversation just before Gimel Tammuz. And ultimately, yeah. And there was this WhatsApp going around today. I received it about Achdus, that the Rebbe sent to Rab Leivov in Sach in Eretz Yisrael. I don't know if you saw it. And basically,
what does it say?
It was quite big words. Basically, he wrote over there that if there was Achdus between Anash, they would even have more success. And the Rebbe said this, and showed like this: if there was Achdus by Anash, v'yesh omer, Askane Anash, if there was by the people who are Askanim and do things, Haya Mashiach ba mikvar, Mashiach would have come already. Elashai Yetzirah Mishtoilo, the Yetzirah is driving crazy. Bipituyim, trying to, with bad ideas. Shaloyal Pisechel Agamre, against all logic. La'es Ato Hitzliach, and as of now he's been successful. Vashem Yirachim. So Achdus between Chassidim definitely will bring Mashiach. So l'chaim to that.
Amen.